ZPAC, it's Zubin. I'm back with TribeTalk. This is uncensored. Please hide the children. We're going to have an open discussion about what the F is going on. I can't just drop F-bombs as liberally as Tom can. with violence against nurses. This particular story of the Delnor nurse who was tortured in her own hospital and shared her story with me and wants this story to be a catalyst for a movement. We are the movement together, silent no more. It's time we stood up and said, this isn't something that we signed up to do. They treat it as part of the background job description, like, oh, well, you work in psych. Of course you're gonna get punched and hit and spit on. No, no, no. And we need better self-defense, we need better security, we need better training, we need better policies when a family comes in and abuses us. One of the things that she mentioned to me yesterday in our talk, and we talked about a lot of stuff, she specifically said, in this era when we have HCAPs, when we have patient satisfaction and the customer is always right, what happens when the customer is a criminal? What happens when the customer isn't right? What happens to us when every day we give and give and give and give and give, but if we ask for anything, we're shut down. And if something happens to us, we're expected to walk it off because that's who we are. It's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit.
Holly Lynn says it should have never came down to a movement. You shouldn't have to have a fucking movement.
Oh, of course. Like the fact, listen, let me look at this live cast. There are 888 people who want to hear about a movement to keep healthcare workers safe. How the fuck did we get to that point? Like, aren't we in the 21st century when there's no other profession short of like, and the military has its own problems, but short of like, you know, the mixed martial arts where you can get punched legally like that and the puncher can get away with it? And sometimes, you know, and then the hospital will go and kiss their butt. And this isn't always the case. There are wonderful administrations who go to bat, and I've heard story after story, who go to bat for their staff. And even though we try to make the patient experience a wonderful one and one where they feel heard and connected, it's not about giving them what they want. It's about giving them what they need and listening to them. And sometimes that means tough love. Like, you will not raise your voice and threaten a healthcare giver. You will not physically assault a healthcare giver. How are we even having this conversation? You would think that would be common sense, right?
Better question, Z. Why are we the only people having this conversation? I don't want to toot our own horns, but I haven't seen any fucking media coverage about this other than the shitty article that the Tribune put out.
Can I tell you something? Fuck the media. All right, the big media, and these assholes try to interview me all the time, and I tell them to fuck themselves because all they want is click, 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 click on their website, right? And the bottom line is they don't give a fuck about this stuff. It doesn't sell papers, all right? But we care because we're there on the front line. We see our friends and our colleagues and our brothers and our sisters suffering. When I heard this, I mean, how many people when they heard this story were just like, fuck this? Just that was one, and it's not like this hasn't happened before. Nurses have been raped, have been held hostage, have been punched, have been hit, have lost their lives. Doctors have been shot. There was a doctor in Australia, a cardiothoracic surgeon, I think it was, who was punched, sucker punched in the lobby after asking someone not to smoke in the lobby. Believe it was a patient with mental illness, and he's in critical condition in an Australian hospital. And I've had many people send me this. It's not just nurses, anyone on the front lines. And why the fuck aren't we standing up and everybody screaming about this? This is a huge problem. It ought to be the front page of every newspaper, but it barely gets mentioned because you know what? Our lives really don't matter to people. They expect us to just give and give and give, and then they wonder why. They wonder why we have Health 2.0, a shitty system where we're slaves to clicking boxes and we don't feel like we have a voice. It's been beating the fuck out of us. We've been led to believe that we don't matter at all. And I'm not just talking about nurses. There are doctors who message me feeling powerless. You talk about 3.0, you talk about what can we do to actually make it happen. Stand the fuck up with us. All right? And let's make our voice heard. There are like 3 million nurses, Tom, and 800 and some odd thousand licensed physicians, and God knows how many RTs. Even if there were 10, they're the loudest 10 people I've ever met because those motherfuckers message me constantly. If we all stood up, you know, no one would be able to ignore us.
You know what that means, Z? That there are 3 million nurses? That means everyone in the country knows a nurse. They're mother, sister, brother, husband is a nurse, and this is still swept under the rug. My wife's a nurse. This fucking infuriates me to no end.
It's complete horseshit, you know? And here's the thing about nurses, all right? This is the thing, and this is their strength and their weakness at the same time. They give. They care about other people. They're rather selfless, right? They stay silent when things go bad because they feel like it's not in their nature or their place to make a noise about it. But here's the thing, so the nurse in Delnor, okay, her sister told me, as soon as she got home, the first thing she was talking about was, oh my gosh, who's gonna cover for me tomorrow? Who's gonna take my shift tomorrow? Is Bob gonna be able to handle it? Because without me, what's gonna happen? Like, that's how they think. They care about other people, and this is how we fucking treat them. We sweep it under the rug. Fucking Northwestern tells people, don't talk to her lawyer and don't do this and don't do that. I don't know what the fuck is going on, but I've heard stuff. I don't know if it's true. But honestly, this is my elephant just stomping through the forest right now, pissed off. Northwestern needs to make sure they step up and support her. They need to fucking support her. And they need to see me saying this and all of us saying we're not going to be silent. Silent no more, because you need to keep your staff safe and support them. And we will support you. We will do everything to take care of our patients and take care of each other. That's the promise of what we're trying to build in 3.0. But if you don't step up to your side of the bargain, then fuck you. And you know what? We ought to just stand up and walk out and watch what happens. The reason we can't do it is because we fucking care about people. That's the problem.
Angela says we should petition for Delnor's Law, making it illegal to penalize nurses for reporting an assault and requiring staff to be given personal panic buttons.
Yes, I agree. That's a great idea. That's an actionable idea. How can you penalize? Literally, people have told me, including the nurses at Delnor, that they are afraid they will lose their jobs if they speak out. If they speak out on social media. There was a nurse in Canada who got sued by her board of nursing for speaking out on social media about the care her grandfather received.
Yeah.
Like, what is this, a fucking thought police? Give me a break. I don't care who you work for. Be respectful of your employer and do it respectfully, but here's the thing. If you can be fired for telling the truth, then something's very wrong with where you work, period.
And let's assuage this. I see people in the comments being like, well, she's going to get a lot of money and this and that.
Okay,
First of all, fuck that. Second of all, the legal system does not put any emphasis on pain and suffering. They only put emphasis on future earnings. So the sum of money will not even be that large for this woman. And that's a fact.
I need you to understand something right fucking now, all right? I talked to her specifically about litigation, and I know there's ongoing litigation against all public, against the correctional officers, the county, and the security company in the hospital. Asked her, I said, if I tell your story, I don't want to interfere with any litigation. I don't want to harm any chance you have of your lawsuit unfolding correctly. So make sure it's okay with your legal people and all of that, that we even talk about it, because that's important to me, that you actually have some justice done in the way that the justice system will handle it. And you know what she told me? She said, I don't care about that. That is not something I care about at all. What I care about is this story does not, what happened to me happened for a reason, and it has some meaning. And if this can do that, if this can help generate an outpouring, a standing up, a silent no more, then it will have been worth it. She doesn't care about that. And that's, again, like, she should care about it, right? In a very practical mindset, because if it's true, if any of the allegations are true, oh my gosh, this was the worst kind of negligence and cowardice on the part of the correctional officer, if it's true. And again, these are allegations, but still, this is what she cares about. It's like, this thing has some purpose and meaning. And look, this has been studied, Tom. We talk about resilience a lot in healthcare, particularly dealing with PTSD. And I will tell you, she is struggling. It is hard. It is hard. She needs your support. You have to, we'll put the P.O. Box address in the description again, and it's in the other video. You have to message her by snail mail, because it means a lot to her. But the idea that resilience comes in many cases The data and the studies on psychology suggest it comes from being able to look at a traumatic event and parse a sense of meaning, some sense finding. And how do I contextualize this in the pantheon of my life? What did it mean that this happened? And how did I grow, or how was I harmed? What happened? And that in itself can lead to resiliency. If we can help others to find that resiliency by giving them a voice, by making sure that we do our part to make sure this doesn't happen again, then that's a role that we can all serve together, Z-Pack. And that's not about litigation. That's about actually making a difference.
I mean, we were talking before the cast about our own little small minor traumas of being in car crashes. And you know, we're both saying how hard it is to get back in the car after you've been in a car crash. Imagine being her and trying to go back to the hospital after this.
Dude, I mean, she was telling me about how she was having nightmares and how she felt it was never going to get better, and she just didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I told her, I'm going to tell you a story that has no even approach to what you suffered, but it's my story, and it's the only way I can find some relation to what you're suffering. And I know it's relatively trivial compared to what you went through, but let me tell it to you because I think it might have a couple of points in it that you might relate to. And it was this: when I was in medical school, it was a second-year medical student. I used to teach MCAT in Berkeley, and I used to actually have medical school at UCSF, so you could cross the Bay Bridge. When I taught MCAT, I would stay there overnight, and then I'd come in at the crack of dawn the next morning to be in class for the next day. One day I was doing that. I was driving, and my dad had gotten me this little tiny Volvo 240, you know, crappy little, oh, we're having audio problems again? Crappy little silver box Volvo. I was driving across the bridge, and what I found was I was at a stoplight. And at this stoplight, I was waiting and listening to NPR or whatever it was, and then the light turns green. And this is what happened. I go through the light. A guy who had later turned out was high on cocaine and speeding passed someone who was parked at the red and zoomed past as fast as they could through my intersection through a red light. He then hit the front of my car. All I see is thump, vroom. The entire front of the car is in my face. Like there's a hood like here and through the windshield. And it's a Volvo, so of course I'm unharmed. And then I see two bodies flying through the air. Like they literally looked like they were sailing like superheroes. That's what I remember in my mind. It was sort of burned in my mind. And when I saw this happen, I thought, oh my God, what the hell? I got out of my car in the middle of this busy intersection in San Francisco. I saw two people on the ground. One, a guy was running to help. The other, I ran to help. The guy I ran to help had a shattered pelvis, ended up surviving. The guy who the other person ran to help died. All because someone ran a red light and I happened to be there. And that night, so the police drove me home because I didn't have a car. They were incredibly kind to me. And to this day, I have a feeling about law enforcement that it's hard to shake, that they are here to help us and we should help them help us. And in the setting of this, that night, I'm totally devastated. I've seen somebody die. I'm there. I feel responsible because I was in the intersection even though I was going through a green and the other guy was high on coke and ran a red. It doesn't matter. You don't feel that way at the time. Just like she didn't feel like a hero even though she saved lives with her strength and her courage and her fortitude and her poise when she was talking to him the entire time and praying with him and being compassionate. That whole time that was going on, that's what she was doing. But she won't accept that because she's still deep in this. And at this point, the news that night in San Francisco, Channel 4, or whatever the hell it was, I think it was Channel 4, broadcast a story about red light runners, how this person had died. They showed a picture of me in the back of a police car and said, here is the gentleman who allegedly ran the red light. And I was so my classmates saw this, everybody saw, and I'm like, holy fuck. And I called them and threatened all kinds of horrible lawsuits, and they they did a retraction the next day, but the damage had already been done. And so to compound the trauma of being involved in a fatal accident, then being blamed for the accident incorrectly by the press publicly, to this fucking day I hate the press. I hate them with a passion, and I'll tell you because they often don't get the story right and they often don't care. And that's the problem, and that's what happened probably in this case too. But I told her the story and I said, for months I couldn't drive. I had nightmares. If I would walk through an intersection, I'd have a panic attack. Anybody in my class who would talk to me about anything, I felt like they were in some way, stabbing me with knives because it was insensitive what they were saying. They didn't understand what had happened to me. And it's incomprehensible, it's illogical, it's an emotional thing, but it's absolutely real. And I said it got better the more I talked about it, the more I leaned on family and friends. It got better, but it took months. And for her, it may take longer than that. But it was clear that hearing the stories that others have shared trauma, it helps people to process stuff because it feels like it's never going to end. And so we need to support her. Share your stories with her. I told her, I said, so many people have messaged me. They say, this happened to me and this happened to me. This guy punched me and broke my clavicle and I hurt my back and I wasn't able to work. And she said, it's happening to everybody and we need to stand together. So again, sometimes for many people, resiliency means connecting with others, talking about it, processing it, but there's not a one size fits all.
Z, so hashtag Delnor's Law is trending right now, which I think was a great suggestion by Angela.
Yeah.
I feel like we have the best group of people right here, right now, to write this law. What would you like to see happen?
The tricky part about me is since I don't do frontline nursing, I can't tell you the vagaries of, should they have a panic button? Should, there be other facets of the law?
I think the most important part of the law would probably be that if you come forth with a assault, nobody can silence you, right?
Well, see, that to me is common sense.
But it's not in the law.
And it's not in the law. So you can't lose your job for talking about violence at the workplace. You can't lose your job for filing assault charges. I think that should be the bare minimum if it isn't the case now. Like, that has to be the bare minimum. And I'm not a lawyer, I don't know what the laws are, but if we can at least do that, then people at least will have a voice. And here's one thing, guys, I want you guys to understand. These motherfuckers will make you feel like you will never get a job somewhere else. That if you lose this job, it's the best job that ever happened to you. And anywhere else you go, you'll work a lot harder for less money and they won't treat you as well. And you're really valued here, so why would you give that shit up? So do everything we say. It is a fucking Stockholm syndrome. You start to love your captor. Every major big institution pulls that shit. They do it to young doctors especially because it's a kind of a handcuffs. It's like, oh, go ahead and look elsewhere, but you're going to give up something really good. Horseshit. Horseshit. If I listened to that, I'd still be doing a job that would have resulted in either my suicide or something else. And so we have to sometimes acknowledge that if a culture, if an environment isn't working for us, we need to stand up, get support, and get the fuck out. Because you know what? Contrary to what they tell you, you are in demand. There are jobs for you, all right? Don't let them tell you otherwise. And also don't take anything I'm saying as legal advice because I'm exemplifying myself from that shit.
Holly Lynn says, ZPAC doesn't stop. Hashtag silent no more. Months from now, when this has died down, we have to remember the fire that has ignited in us all. It starts right here.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, look, a lot of people have messaged me their stories privately. And in a way, it seems to me it's their way of processing this because no one really listens, and having someone hear it and be seen and be known is important to them. I would argue this, if you're comfortable with it, share your story, make sure it's okay with your administration, because again, until Delnor's Law goes into place, you could get fired for speaking on social media. It depends on what the policies are that you signed up for, right? And this is really bad news, guys. It's not good. We can't really let it say. But if you can share your stories as a visitor post on our page, in the comments, any way that you can get them seen, it keeps the momentum in this conversation.
Angela also just made a Delnor's Log Group, so search that on Facebook and you guys can find the group.
I love it.
We'll keep this going.
I love it.
And hopefully somebody's a lawyer and they can help us actually write the law.
Yep. And again, I'm not a litigator. I don't think I can write laws, but I will do everything publicly I can to raise attention about this because I think it's one of the seminal issues in building Health 3.0 is keeping us safe, caring for the caregivers, and that's a part of this new emergent in healthcare. And again, if we don't get that right, then we fuck everything else up. Like, the customer is not always right in healthcare. It's a collaboration between us and the patients where there's accountability on all sides. Other comments?
Let's see.
Don't call it Delnor's Law. It sounds like something for Delnor. Yeah, that's true, Leslie Pachis, but then again, could be the Delnor Law. I mean, there's a million things you could call it. I think we're getting into semantics. We may come up with the perfect hashtag. We're coming up with it on the fly.
Laws don't need good names.
That's true.
They just need to be in place.
I mean, I got my Amber Alert dialed, you know what I'm saying? That's not a brilliant name, but it works really well.
David says, can you talk about how doctors cope with their disability during the residency and fellowship? Do you know something about how the system or hospital help doctors with a disability?
Yes.
If a med school students have a profound hearing loss, where can they go for help? What specialty is good for them? Can they practice medicine even though they can't hear? It's a little off topic, but...
No, but I think it's related to, do we support frontline caregivers, right? Especially if they're injured, like how do you support someone with bad back pain or bad injury, et cetera, shoulder problems? You know, they can't lift patients, that sort of thing. So I know several residents who had different sorts of disabilities who went through residency and got a lot of support and a lot of difficulty too. And a lot of times the difficulty is from other people who have to cover for them, and they're bitching and moaning about it. But the truth is, they do get a lot of administrative support if it's done correctly, and you can do quite well. I know a deaf hospitalist who does very, very well, a deaf hospitalist. And if you can do hospital medicine without and being severely hearing impaired, then you can do a lot of medicine. So, you know, these things can be supported, and we should support each other.
Let's see. Allie says, isn't Tom's dad a lawyer? Yeah, but he doesn't do that kind of law.
Yeah, it's a different type of law, but he's often very helpful with us, and we appreciate all his advice, although it's off the record.
HIPAA needs to be amended to release information when regarding an assault, and it can't be hanged as a barrier to reporting. That's from Joe.
HIPAA is a problem because, again, if you can't mention the name of the assailant, then what the fuck? And that's why I think there's this double standard. Like, healthcare people are held to this set of standards, which some of it's appropriate. We are in a different caliber. We have to take people's lives in our hands. It's true for air traffic controllers. It's true for...
Yeah, but if you're in a different caliber, it should be societally not okay to fucking hit you.
Yeah, hello. That's right.
I mean, do we respect healthcare workers? Not. You're so great. You take on all this responsibility. Yeah, but if you get assaulted, you're on your own.
Yeah, you're on your own. No, and it's true for mental illness in the healthcare profession. It's stigmatized. You're kind of left on your own. It's true for a lot of stuff, right? Man up is the most common term you hear. Just man up, man. Suck it up. Suck it up. And look, to some extent, Tom, and I'll say this just from my general millennial bashing, which I love to do, sucking it up when you're training and stuff like that, there is a certain ethos to that in terms of really just stop complaining and go do work. But if it's something really that, you know, you're feeling depressed, you're having, you know, a manic episode, which happened to, you know, one of our residents, something else is happening, you need support. And you need your other fellow trainees and caregivers to show the same compassion they would show patients. And we need to have compassion for ourselves. Like this poor nurse in Delnor, you know, herself is the last person she's thinking about now. Even though she was this, you know, such horrible things were perpetrated on her, and she's thinking of everyone else. And that's the thing we have to learn also. And this is a skill. You can practice it. Self-love, self-compassion, etc. Self-care. I mean, especially for Tom, since there's no deodorant. It's complicated.
Jaylene says, let's not make this nurse a figurehead unless she wants to. She deserves to make that choice.
She does, and she did. And I told her I wasn't going to use her name. And I said, you know, if I talk about this, it's going to be a thing. Like, you have to understand that. It's going to be a movement, and it's going to be a process, and it's going to be focused. And I told her, I said, I don't know that you want it focused on you. I think you want it focused on the movement. And she said, that's fine. If my story can spark this movement, then I want it told. And we talked about this quite a bit because I wanted to make sure, and her sister was there. So, because sometimes when you're in a state, right, you're making decisions that maybe aren't in your best interest. But her sister was there together, and they agreed. And that's why I agreed to tell the story and to talk about it and to really push this as a movement. And if that hadn't happened, believe me, guys, believe me, we definitely thought and rethought and rethought and rethought about this. Is this the right thing to do for her? And honestly, from everything that I spoke with her, from having it all be on the record to it being a way to bring purpose and meaning to this, you know, I think that it is.
They don't respect us. Patients can talk and treat us like shit, but if we take up for ourselves, we get reprimanded, but nothing happens to the patient. they need to be held accountable as well. Tom, get deodorant. Go to hell.
Tom smells, but for other reasons. Yeah, it's true. There's a double standard. And the truth is, look, a lot of our patients are vulnerable. A lot of them aren't in their right head, delirious, whatever. And that's a piece of it. But the other piece of it is patients who just, either they're emotional or they're just bad. They've never learned behavior. And the way they treat people when they're under stress is malproductive. And what we do is we encourage, like with a child, if bad behavior is accepted, it continues. If you don't set boundaries, if you don't set tolerance policies, like you will fucking go to jail, all right? If you lay a finger on a healthcare provider, you will rot in prison. If that's the assumption, if that's the boundary, assuming you were in your right mind and you're doing this volitionally, then it's gonna start to change behavior. It really is. It's gonna be at least a partial deterrent, and it has to be backed up with accountability and actionable prosecutions.
It seems like the hospital's a minefield. You know, like a lot of people in the comments have either been assaulted or have had really close calls with assault. So what do you do? I mean, that seems like, how do you get to this place?
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I think it is part of our job to deal with dangerous situations. It just is, because people are agitated, psychiatric issues, mental illness, those kind of things become potentially dangerous. Now, people can be very well trained to handle those dangers. There will always be accidents and screw-ups with that. That's one part of the job. It means better training, it means better support, it means better funding, it means better staffing, motherfuckers. Staff up. Like in Health 3.0, if you're paid on real outcomes and you're also, caregiver well-being is part of the payment model, then fuck you if you don't staff right, you're gonna get hit in the wallet. Right now, if you don't staff right, you get rich. That is so fucked up. So we can train better, we can staff better, we can do those kind of things. That's one way to support a dangerous situation, right? But then we also have to have a zero fucking tolerance for just random violence. Like at the supermarket, you don't see a cashier being punched or pinched or threatened on a regular basis and then people brushing it under, right? Motherfuckers go to jail when that happens. You assault a police officer, now a lot of times they actually brush that off too, because police officers see it as part of the job, and I'm not sure that's okay. And so, on and on and on and on. What do you think, Tom?
Everybody get a gun.
As usual, Logan with the answer of the day. Everybody get a gun. There are actually, Logan, I think a lot of nurses who conceal.
Yeah, they're in the comments.
Yeah, they're in the comments. And I don't know what the laws are. I think it depends on the state and the hospital. Look, I'm not advocating bringing a gun to work, because to me that still seems like, I don't know, it seems like a recipe for someone getting shot accidentally.
Lindsay May says, Z-Dog, thank you for what you were doing for us at Delnor. Our hearts are broken for her. All this love from strangers around the world is amazing. This nurse is a tough cookie, always has been. Send your love, guys. I know she'll appreciate it.
The one thing I want to tell you in particular, and everyone at Delnor, is that we are thinking of all of you, because it has to be horrible, traumatic, terrible to work there and feel like this has happened in your midst to one of yours. And I know it's hard, and I know some of you are struggling because I've gotten your messages. So I want you to know that we're thinking of you too, and we actually appreciate all the support that you've given her and her family, and they appreciate it. They know it, you guys. They really appreciate everything everyone at that hospital has done for them. It means the world. So we'll put that P.O. box up. We want everyone to mail support, and also just give love to Delnor, because they're hurting. This is traumatic. This is a group of people that are working as a team, and when one team member gets hurt like this, they all get hurt. So let's think about them as well. What do you think, Tom?
I think let's wrap it up, and I think let's make it a law. Let's do whatever we need to do to make it a law.
Yeah, I'm all for it. And we'll do our best on our end, guys. And tomorrow I want you guys, so first of all, I want you to hit share. I want you to spread the word. This is a movement, and we'll see you guys tomorrow for Incident Report.
Go, 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 go. I'm alright. Uh-huh.